What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and welcome back to another video and another Friday Night Magic report. So this week, I played Blue-White Familiars, which isn't a deck I don't think I've ever played at one of these events. It is a deck that I do really enjoy piloting, though, so I was pretty excited to try it out. Also, it recently made some updates to my list, so that was fun to see in action as well. So we're going to get into exactly what list I brought as to both the main board and the sideboard, as well as doing a quick overview of how each matchup went. But before we get into that, guys, if you enjoy the content that I create, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate the support. And with that said, let's get into it. All right, so let's get into what we have in the main deck. First, we have 4 copies of Sunscape Familiar, kind of the namesake card of the deck. This basically reduces the cost of all the blue spells that we have in the deck, and allowing us to create a loop with Ghostly Flicker, which is basically one of the main parts of our win con in the deck. So it is very much like a combo deck. Does have some kind of grindy control elements too, as it kind of takes its time to set up the combo and doesn't try and do it super early like say Mogwarts or Walls combo. So we can take our time getting there. So another big part of the combo is God Pharaoh's Faithful. This lets us gain infinite life when we go off, so a lot of decks are just going to scoop to that. So we got 4 of those as well. Also got 3 copies of Maul Drifter, which is a very good card to help us dig. We can also, if we got a couple familiars out, it's just a 1 mana evoke cost to basically 1 mana draw 2 cards. Maybe we'll find an ephemerate or something as well, and then we can just, keep that train going. 2 mana, draw 4 cards is not bad when with ephemerate and that sort of thing. All right, and then we also got 1 copy of Seagate Oracle. Now, I have seen some lists running Augur of Bolas. I think Seagate Oracle is a pretty nice, as it lets you grab any card. You only get to see 2 of them though, so definitely the Augur does let you see more cards, but you are kind of limited in your choices there. This doesn't really give you a limit, just in the amount of cards that you can see. Also gets reduced by Sunscape Familiar, which is pretty good as well. Also got 2 copies of Archaeomancer. I was on 3 Archaeomancers for a while, but there has been moments where I'm drawing into an Archaeomancer, but I don't need it yet. So now I'm going to just down to 2, and I feel like that has been a pretty good spot for the deck. Also running 2 copies of Murmuring Mystic. This is another way that we can combo with the deck when we do have our Flicker loop online. We can basically use this to make infinite birds, or just have a pretty good board presence before we start going off with our combo. Definitely this deck can die to very aggressive decks, so the Murmuring Mystic can really get a lot of chump blockers out, since we have a ton of instants and sorceries that we cast in the deck. So on to the instant and sorceries. We got 4 copies of Preordain, a great 1 mana spell to just help us dig. And then 3 copies of Loring Revealed. This is just such a good card for the deck. Helps us, when helps us keep like hands that don't have a whole lot of lands in them, as we can just find more lands with it. Also, we can just use it late game, especially with some Sunscape Familiars out, that it can be a 4 or 3 mana draw 3 cards, which is pretty nice. So we got 3 of those in the deck. Also running 2 copies of Merchant Scroll. Now this can be used to draw or to tutor up a lot of different cards in the deck. They do have to be instants. We do have a ton of instants in the deck, so we can use this to either, most of the time we're probably going to find Ghostly Flicker, but there are a number of other cards that we might want to find too. They do have to be a blue instant though, so you cannot use this to tutor Ephemerate, but that's not so bad. Also got 1 copy of Step Through, so this helps us find anything that's a wizard, and we are running a few wizards in the deck. The big one being Archaeomancer. Could also grab a Murmuring Mystic if you like. Alright, and then our 1 copy of Ghostly Flicker. So this is our basically one of our main combo pieces with That being Sunscape Familiar, Archaeomancer, and Ghostly Flicker, and then you're either going to want a God Pharaoh's Faithful or a Murmuring Mystic most of the time. Definitely probably want a God Pharaoh's Faithful, as the life gain is pretty much game over for a good chunk of the meta decks. Alright, and then we also got 4 copies of Snap. Now, Snap has so much utility in the deck, it's kind of insane and a little bit gross, to be honest. Because we can just, either bounce our opponent's creatures or bounce our own cards when they target them, and then untap 2 lands, and we can just keep things going. So Snap is a very good card for the deck. Also got 2 copies of Prohibit. This can be a 1 mana counterspell. Now you are kind of limited um, due to the fact that it can only counter spells with a certain mana value. It does have a kicker cost that you can pay, so you can counter up to like a 4 mana value spell. In the pauper metagame, there's a lot of decks running very low curve, very low mana curve in their decks, so it's gonna hit a lot of stuff in the meta. Now, if you're going up against some bigger mid-range deck or maybe even Ponza, there's gonna be some cards that this will not be able to interact with. So there are definitely some matchups where it's less good, but most of the time it's gonna be a pretty great card for you. And we're also running 3 copies of Impulse. Now, this is a new card I added to the deck, as I was seeing of a bunch of more recent decks running 3 of in the deck, and I honestly, after the games, really, really love Impulse. With 1 familiar out, this is basically 1 mana, C4 cards, and put 1 into your hand. So really helps you dig and find whatever missing pieces you need in order to start comboing off. So really love Impulse in the deck. It is a great addition in my opinion. Also got 3 copies of Meeting of Minds, and this is basically, especially with familiars out, if you got 1 or 2 familiars, all you got to do is tap maybe 2 to 3 creatures. So it's basically a free draw 2. So really adds a lot to the deck. Then I also got, this is kind of a newer card that came out, I believe, in the most recent Ravnica set, Out Cold. So this is one of the new can't be countered cards. You basically get to tap 2 target creatures and put stun counters on them and then investigate. So really great against the Tolarian Terrors of the world. I did get to play this against someone playing Terror. So yeah, that kind of just paid off pretty well. And then you also get a clue token from that, so you get to use that to draw more cards, which is also very good. And this is probably one of my bigger pet cards in the deck. It's Rewind. So basically, it's a counterspell, but you untap up to 4 lands, so you can really do a lot with this. And with 2 familiars out, it's just like a regular counter spell. And then you get to untap 4 lands, which means whatever else other instants you have in your hand, you can start casting them. Um, so pretty fun card. Definitely a pet card. I see a lot of other decks running a one of counterspell in the deck. I'm on Rewind as I just really love the card. Okay, and then also running 1 copy of Ephemerate. And in our mana base, I'm on an 18 land build, which is kind of about 2 less than I think is what is average right now. I went down to 18. I've gone down as far as 16. That kind of felt like too little. Went up to 17. It still quite wasn't right, but at 18, I really feel like I hit the sweet spot. Um, as when I was originally running 20 lands in this, but I've had so many games where I've just flooded out that, especially with like the Lorien revealed, I don't really think you need to be at 20 lands anymore. And honestly, I haven't really, with all the card draw and all the card selection, I haven't really had an issue finding all the lands that I need by the time I get to combo off or just hold up interaction or what have you. So we got 2 copies of Ash Barrens, and then 1 copy of Glacial Floodplain, 1 Skybridge Towers. We got 3 copies of Azorius Chancery. and one mortuary mire. Then I got one plains, and the rest are all basic islands. So that's the main deck. Now in the sideboard. Now this is where I've made some recent changes as well. So we got one copy of Azure Fleet Admiral, which is pretty good in grindier matchups, as then you can then get the Monarch, or you can also use it to take the Monarch from other people, as it can't be blocked by the if the defending player is the Monarch. So you can take the Monarch from others as well as becoming the Monarch yourself. So that's a pretty fun card. Also got one copy of Sage's Row Denizen. Now I used to run this in the main board. Recently put it over to the sideboard as I didn't think like it was that necessary to always have it in the main deck. Also frees up a slot for our Seagate Oracle so that we can dig a little bit more. But I do think Sage's Row Denizen is a great card to bring in against other combo decks, especially ones that do infinite damage, like say Mogwarts or Walls combo, as like they don't really care if you make infinite life. It doesn't truly matter to them. Also things like Turbo Fog, this is really good against as well. So again, in certain matchups, I usually side this in. And you can it is also a wizard, so you can also fetch this with step through, which is also very nice. Then we also got two copies of Exclude. It's kind of like an Essence Scatter effect, except you get to draw a card. It is a 3 mana spell, but with Sunscape Familiar out, it's easily a 1 to 2 mana spell, so that is pretty nice as well. Also got one more copy of Out Cold to bring in against the Terror decks. And one copy of Negate. Been thinking about maybe turning Negate into Unwind. Haven't really committed to that plan yet, though Unwind is nice because it does let us untap lands. So might go over to that eventually, especially with the familiars, but haven't committed to that idea as of right now. And then we also got 3 copies of Nature's Chant. Now I was on Dust to Dust with this deck, but then I was seeing a lot of lists running Nature's Chant. And since it is a green spell, it does get discounted by Sunscape Familiar, so you can play this card for 1 mana, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, it lets you destroy artifacts and enchantments. Also got one copy of Dawnbringer Cleric, as it's just got so many options and is just a really good card. And then one copy of Union of the Third Path. Now, this is a great card to bring in against more aggressive or burn decks, as you generally have a pretty big hand of cards. I mean, we're usually around 6 or 7. I've had to discard a lot in cleanup step with this deck because sometimes I just have way too many cards. So Union Third Path is good. You can gain a ton of life in there. You're probably gaining 6 or 7 life with Union of the Third Path. Also lets you draw another card, so that's cool. And we also got one copy of Destroy Evil. Also got some great options on this as well. Uh, has 2 modes, so that's pretty cool. And also got 3 copies of Hydro Blast. This card is great. We can use it in a pinch to gain some extra life with our God Pharaoh's Faithful, or just counter or destroy red cards. So pretty good card there. So that's the list, guys. So let's kind of talk about how the matchups went. So overall, our record that night was 1-2. So we did have some losses. I've been on a bit of a losing streak for a while, um, which happens. I mean, that's just RNG for you. You know, you don't always get the greatest matchups. You don't always get the greatest draws. It happens. Um, but anyways, our first match of the night was against Is It Fairies, who's also a Tolarian Terror deck. So we got to try Out Cold, which that card does a lot of work against Tolarian Terrors. They had 2 terrors out, and we just tapped them before combat, investigated, and all they could really do was swing at us with some 1/1s, which was fine. And we were still gaining some life at that point. But the big thing about that matchup, they got a lot of counter spells. And though we have counter spells ourselves, we don't really run as many as more of a grinding control deck like Is It Fairies. So basically, We had a lot of stack wars throughout the matches. They did end up winning. They went 2-0 against us. So we never really got to a place where we could get set up enough to truly go off. They're also running Scred, which is just a great removal spell against us. Kills basically all of our cards. So that was a pretty tough. It was a pretty tough match. I definitely wouldn't say that is it fairies or maybe even is it Scred in general as an archetype is gonna be pretty good against familiars. So it's a very tough matchup, and you really got to play your cards very well. In the first game, I ended up flooding out, which was crazy since we have gone down uh, to 18 lands since we were at 20. So that was a pretty tough match. So on match two, I went up against I believe it was Mono Black Devotion or Mono Black Control. We ended up going 2-0 against that deck because at a certain point they just didn't have enough interaction for us when we started playing our combo. And also, they don't. He was running a black counter spell, which made his. I think it's the one that makes you pay 5 life or have that spell countered. So that I think it was like Dash Hopes maybe. Yeah, that was a pretty spicy card to see being played, and honestly, really loved that my opponent was playing that card. As I've been trying to find a way to work that card into my black decks but really haven't truly committed to that plan yet. So it was fun to see that being played. But we did go 2-0 against them as like I said, they just didn't have the right interaction at the right time when we were trying to go for our win. And then we did gain infinite life, made our infinite birds, and the game was over. In match three, we played against Wall's combo, which was basically a race to see who could get their combo first. Definitely, Walls can do it a lot quicker than we can, as they don't really need as many pieces as we do. They kind of only, as long as they have a bunch of their creatures on the field, it's very easy for them to create their infinite mana and then do infinite damage. So they did beat us in the first game. Now in the second game, we brought in a lot of stuff. We brought in our excludes and other counter spells, um, and we also brought in the Sage's Row Denizen against them, which I think is very good against Wall's combo. As you know, when you gain infinite life, they got infinite damage, so the infinite life doesn't really matter. Also, the 1/1 birds don't really matter since you have to wait a turn in order to kill them with those birds. And at that point, they might have found a way to go infinite themselves and just kill you before you ever get a chance to attack. So, Sage's Row Denizen was very good in that matchup, so we did win that second game. However, in the third game, they did get the win against us. I was a very close. I was basically a turn away from doing our doing our own combo. So it was a very, very close match. Was a really fun time to be in a combo mirror because it really is just to see who can get their combo assembled first. And in Pauper, there's no easy 2 card combos. You definitely got to do a lot of setup and able to go off. So it was pretty fun just to kind of race with the Walls combo player. And those were the matchups, guys. All in all, it was a pretty fun night. Was pretty excited to play Blue White Familiars, and there was even maybe some discussion with some of the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction cards about a new combo line that could potentially make it into the deck. So I am considering it, but I'll probably touch on that in a later video. But that's gonna do it for today. But I'm very interested to hear what you guys think about the list I brought. Are there cards that you run in familiars that I wasn't running that you think I should consider? Let me know in the comments section below. As always, guys, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.